Welcome to this week's episode of Liberty Chat, brought to you by the Liberal Democrats.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Liberty Chat, where we bring you our weekly roundup of all things Liberal Democrats, all things Liberty related from around the country, sometimes from around the world as well, but obviously speaking with all of our candidates here and giving you updates on events. My name's Kirsty O'Sullivan. I'm joined tonight by Kate Fantinel, our lead Senate candidate in WA.
Hi, I'm in my birth state of South Australia, but I'll be back in WA soon, so don't miss me too much.
And we have John Ruddick, our New South Wales lead Senate candidate. Hi, John.
Good evening, Kirsty. G'day, Kate. How are we all going?
We are ready to win 2 seats at the South Australian election this weekend, John. Maybe even 3, but we'll talk about that later. Sorry, Kirsty, I'm getting excited already.
It is very exciting. And people may have realised that there is a missing spot. We were supposed to have our lead Senate candidate for South Australia on board tonight on the panel, Mr. Campbell, and he is being held up by government red tape. That we all love complaining about that. So obviously with the South Australia state election this weekend, they've been putting up a whole bunch of call flutes and signage around the place, and they've been almost hit with some fines, some ridiculous fines for posters being higher than 3 meters. There's so many crazy rules that they put on with electoral advertising. So it's going to be a $16,000 fine, which is crazy. And as Canelm explained to me earlier today, that's what happens. The major parties get out there super early, take up all the spots on all the polls, and it has to be above 2 meters, but below 3 meters. So that's basically just one call flute along that row. And if you're not there early enough, you miss out essentially. So he's running around, out around his area there, pulling down a bunch of call flutes. And apparently it's also started raining. And as you well know, we've got some of those South Australia boys that will be in later tonight. So yeah, as I said, we always love complaining about government overreach and silly rules, especially when it comes to minor parties, because the major parties seem to be able to get away with a whole bunch of different stuff as well. We do have still a very big show tonight. We are introducing our number 2 Senate candidate for New South Wales, Mr. John Larter. Very well known around the country for the work that he's been doing against the mandates and then with the protests as well. So he'll be on a bit later, and I'm sure he is in the chat box as well if anyone wants to put any messages up there. And as I said, we will be having our 3 candidates from South Australia on a bit later as well: James Hole, Peter McMahon and Joshua Smith. And very importantly, we also have a special guest. I'm going to get his surname wrong, Mr. Rocco Loiacono, and he's a senior law lecturer from Curtin University over in Perth, and he's going to be talking about his new book that he's got with Dr. Augusto Zimmerman called Deconstructing ScoMo. So all of these people that are coming on tonight are in the chat box, so please feel free to message them whilst we're waiting. But first, let's get a bit of an update from Kate and John and see what they've been doing. Firstly, let's start with you, Kate. Yes, that is a bit of a different background for you. You're at home in South Australia.
Yes. I am in my parents' house in regional South Australia. I've already told them, please don't yell out anything embarrassing while I'm doing this live stream. But I've come back to help the South Australian guys get elected. I've been out driving around putting call flutes up for them in the country. I think I did it legally. I've just sent my dad out to check.
Definitely go and check. We don't want to pay $16,000.
I don't want to be responsible for any more debt. So I'm here just until next week, and then I'll be back in Western Australia. There's a big battle to fight there. They're in the toughest restrictions in the country at the moment, with the restrictions on nightclubs, 150 people seated service. I've never been to a nightclub like that, but that's the rule. 500 limit on Anzac Day attendance at the State War Memorial, which my candidates and I are not going to take lying down. So there's a lot to get done when I come back to Western Australia next week.
Beautiful. And obviously with that South Australia state election, I'll also mention we are having a freedom bus driving down from Melbourne, and I'm going to be on that. It's going to be a bit of fun. We've got some people coming from New South Wales as well, and we are all heading down to help out the South Australian team. So it'll be a little bit of fun as well. John Ruddick, what have you been up to this week?
Okay, well, just quickly on South Australia, Sportsbet has got a market on what parties are going to win a seat in the Legislative Council in South Australia. And we're in 6th spot, so we're clearly in the top half. When they're saying that if we're $2.75, which is roughly saying we've got a 1 in 3 chance of winning. So let's prove them wrong and let's prove Kate right and let's win 2 spots.
Yep.
Okay, so look, I've done a couple of radio interviews this week, which have been good. We've got 47 electorates in New South Wales. I think we've got candidates confirmed in 20 at the moment. We're hoping that is going to get a little bit higher. We've got, on the 9th of April, we're having the New South Wales campaign launch. We're very pleased that David Limbrick will be coming up from Sydney. And I think he's going to be on Sky the next day in person. So yes. 9th of April in the city. The details will be coming out sort of over the weekend or early next week. It's going to be Saturday afternoon and it's going to be a lot of fun. So hopefully we can all come along there. I'll tell you a very interesting thing that happened in New South Wales this week. Dom Perrottet spoke at the Council of Economic Development of Australia. Okay. And I've made a little video about it, which is going to be going live later tonight. Dom Perrottet is, out of all the leaders we have in this country, he is the best leader we've got on COVID. He's still a 3 out of 10. The others are 1 out of 10. So he's still poor, but he was extremely honest. So please keep an eye out for my Twitter feed later tonight, because I'm sure a lot of you have seen it, but I really break down what he says. He says, yeah, the QR codes, we weren't even checking the QR codes. He said, we just did it for media management. He's basically admitting that the media is running the agenda in this country. So it was refreshingly honest, but really jaw-dropping.
Yeah. And that was in like a private sort of event, wasn't it? It wasn't really supposed to be released. Yes,
well, it was at a think tank, a sort of a non-partisan think tank CETA. He gave like a half-hour prepared speech, and this was in the Q&A afterwards. And yeah, I'm not certain that he knew that there was a video going.
And we will also add an event that you and both yourself and Kate will be speaking at, is the Nick Samios Flat Taxes and, what was it? Here we go. Flat Taxes and Free Markets Lunch Symposium on the 31st of March with an awesome guest list of speakers. So quite a few that will actually be in person. Obviously, yes. Nick Samios, our candidate for Barrowa, and John Ruddick. We've got Ross Cameron there. We've also got former Senator David Leyonhjelm, who's popping along to speak, and also Brian Marlow, President of the Australian Taxpayer Alliance. And obviously, we are very friendly with the ATA and love all the work that they do. And obviously, Kate, you'll be appearing via Zoom, as will David Limbrick.
I can't wait. There's so many great candidate events going on at the moment. It's just a great time to be in the Democrats, isn't it?
It's going to be a really great luncheon. So it's out in Parramatta. It's a Lebanese banquet.
It's 2 days after the federal budget. So the federal budget is 2 weeks yesterday, and then Nick's event is 2 weeks tomorrow. So it's really a response to the federal budget, which of course no other political party except for the Liberal Democrats is going to be talking about how we're actually going to reduce the debt that we've racked up thanks to COVID. So that's an important part of what we're going to be talking about.
And the details for that are on our main website, on the events page, also on the New South Wales state page, and also on Nick Samios's website himself. Now, we also don't have our lead Senate candidate, Campbell Newman, for Queensland, so he's not on tonight, but we do actually have a little recording from him. He is touring around Western Queensland.
G'day, Campbell here. G'day, Liberty Chat. We're here at St George in Western Queensland. I'm right on the banks of the Balonne River. That's right behind you right now. But behind me is the Australian Hotel, and I'll come back to that in a moment. This is a 5-day trip to Western Queensland. We're doing Gundawindi, St George, Charleville, Roma, Dalby, and we're talking to people about their views how to hear in the regions. The interesting thing that we're seeing is obviously a strong desire to have government out of people's lives. People want to get on, bring up their kids, run their businesses, grow their own personal prosperity. They just wish government would get out of the way. That comes through in many, many conversations we're having already. Tonight at 6 p.m, we've got politics in the pub here at the Australian Hotel. By the time you see this message, perhaps I won't have escaped unscathed, but seriously, I'm sure it's going to be a fun evening with a lot of locals keen to talk about what's on their mind. So we'll endeavour to come back to you next week with a report on this great trip to the regionals in Western Queensland.
I do love that there are a bunch of comments in there about the 4X. Selby, why do Queenslanders drink 4X? It's because they can't spell. Oh, never mind. They can't spell. And as we mentioned last week with the flooding, the actual 4X building in Milton was flooded. You know, it's an actual disgrace. I'm a Queenslander, but I do not drink 4X or any beer, to be honest. So he's out there touring around through the western regions of Queensland with his number 2 candidate, Tegan Granger. And they've been out there with Kayla, their part of their media team, and actually having a bit of fun out there as well. So we're actually going to go to our first special guest tonight, which is, of course, our John Ruddick's running mate with the Senate in New South Wales, and we do welcome Mr. John Larter.
Hello guys, how you going?
Hi, John.
G'day,
It's
John.
another confusing one. We just have
How are
so
you,
many
mate?
Johns around this party.
Lots of Johns.
Lots of Johns. So it's well, I've started at hashtag Team Johns. So that's what I'm
Good
running
idea.
with. So welcome to your first
Thank
appearance
you.
on Liberty Chat. I'm sure we'll have you again. Now, you guys did a sneaky little reveal on Saturday, showing yourself as the number 2 candidate with John Ruddick.
Yeah, we've been trying to fit it in officially, but it's just been a bit difficult. I've been obviously pretty hectic with the floods and with the situation with the mandates and fighting hazard in the courts. So we've just been a little bit limited for time, haven't we, John? But
Yes.
we thought it was better to sneak it in and surprise everyone.
Well, for
John-
anyone that doesn't know John Larter, he just sort of alluded to it then, but John Larter, 20-something years of paramedic. You're also on the local council, is it Snowy River Council?
Snowy Valleys Council,
Snowy
yes.
Valley.
I'm a former mayor there and deputy mayor and currently a councillor on there. So it's, I've previously run as a candidate for the Liberal Party in the seat of Cunningham in the federal election. So come with a little bit of campaigning experience.
Yes, and obviously very well known for taking the Health Minister, Brad Hazzard, to court over these vaccine mandates.
Yeah, my mate, Brad Hazzard, the grub.
The health hazard.
Well, what's happened now with the New Zealand court, with the New Zealand court, if your same issue, John, had been decided by those justices in New Zealand, you would have won. Is that your understanding?
Well, I think so, John. You know, the reality is that, this has been a farcical from day dot. And unfortunately, what people aren't seeing, I mean, is the back of house of health is in such a state of disrepair that people are dying, not because of COVID, but in spite of it. I mean, the reality is that, people are committing suicide because they've lost their jobs. People aren't getting their prostates checked, and they've got cancers that could have been detected early. Women weren't getting the mammograms done because they cancelled all the breast screen buses. People weren't getting their elective surgeries done for their cancer operations, and their melanomas being removed. And suddenly we've got this, state of health in New South Wales, and I'm sure around Australia, that is just a complete joke. And people are now, we'll never be able to catch up with this. It's just right. So difficult. And then when you couple that with all the health front of house stuff like the ambulance service, and you've got all these reports now, and they're true, of people dying because they can't get an ambulance in a timely fashion. I mean, it's such a disgrace that these governments have been allowed to get away with this. And we need a royal commission, and I know we're calling for one, and hopefully it can happen sooner than later.
And in fact, Ben has actually said in here the amount of people are dying here in Victoria because 000 aren't picking up their calls on time. And I know I've got several mates who are paramedics up in North Queensland, and same thing. They're just, because of all these protocols, they're just having to ramp up. So they're sitting around in hospital car parks and not actually able to get out there on their calls because of these just ridiculous sort of rules that are happening. And so obviously with the campaign, and I'm assuming that you'll be at the launch in Sydney as well, you have been obviously very, very busy and going to a lot of the protests as well, and obviously being up and helping with the cleanups as well. So there's a lot of very positive comments for you in the chat. And I must say, when the email went out, so the email invite went out yesterday, I got a lot of responses. Everyone very, very excited to have you on the team, John.
Oh, well, look, it's an absolute pleasure to be on the team, because I think it's just so important that we get some very strong representatives into Parliament. Getting John in there in the first instance is the goal. And if I happen to get fortunate and get over the line as well, that will be a bonus. But look, the reality is that we've got to. We're obviously not going to stop the major parties in this election from getting the votes. I mean, we'll be able to, I think, end up with a situation where we hopefully control the Senate, and I think that will be a magnificent outcome for Australia, because these major parties are drunk on power, and they've just taken the people of Australia for a complete ride. And we just need to put Labor, Liberal and the Greens and the Nationals last. And I've said to people all along, look, I don't, I'd love you to vote for the Liberal Democrats, because I think of all the parties that are out there, I think the platform and the policies are excellent. But the reality is we just need people to vote these major parties out. So, I mean, if the Liberal Democrats aren't the right fit for you, and Pauline Hanson is, or Clive Palmer or whoever, just vote for them. I mean, we're obviously not going to be a natural fit for everyone, but that's the reality of politics. But I think with the team we've got, and we have a great team now, around the state. I mean, these candidates that are popping up, I mean, they're first class. So, we're going to be a force to be reckoned with. And, I think if we stay positive and we put forward this excellent manifesto product that you guys have developed so perfectly, then, I think we're in with a good chance of making a real difference at the federal election.
Yeah, I think we all agree with that. And we certainly need a bunch of volunteers working on the campaign around you as well. Well, both Johns, obviously, but so certainly anyone that wants to get involved and help out Team Johns on the campaign trail, certainly get in touch via the website, or you can email at contact@ldp.org.au. We will have John Larter on our website very soon. Just waiting on a bio, John.
He's just a bit slack. I think they know who I am.
I know you've been doing much more useful work actually cleaning up and helping flood victims. That is certainly way more important than writing a few pithy words for the website. Well,
look, that's been an absolute disaster up there, and our hearts should go out to those people on the northern rivers, and in fact in Queensland as well, because what is actually happening up there is like it's like war. It really is. I mean, I wasn't around for Cyclone Tracy. I was a bit certainly, I don't think I was even born then. So it's a crazy situation on that north coast, and the government's response has been absolutely abysmal.
Exactly.
You just can't put it into words how bad it was, and I witnessed it firsthand, and it was an absolute pleasure to be able to go and help those guys up there, and hopefully we just keep that Australian spirit and that volunteering at the forefront, and we can help them out, get them back on their feet again. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight, John, and I hope you do get to sort of stay and on the chat box there, because as I said, there's a lot of love for you in there, that is for sure.
Thank you.
So I know you've got a lot of admirers around the party, and certainly a lot of people that are really proud with the work that you've been doing, and really proud that you've joined us.
It's an honor to be part of it, and just stay with us, and we'll do some great things in May for sure, and just everyone support one another, and let's unite Australia back to the way it should be.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, John, for joining us.
Pleasure.
Well, as I said, there's a lot of love for John in the chat. I know a lot of you are big fans of John Larter and all the work that he's been doing at all the protests. And obviously he's been with Graham Hood and traveling around and speaking out against these mandates. So I think it's really awesome. And I think Team Johns will be quite a formidable force in New South Wales.
We're very happy to have him because, you know, these freedom marches where John usually speaks, he gets a huge roar of support.
Oh, yeah.
So, and when he's in the Supreme Court, sometimes you can watch it live on YouTube and you've got like, 70,000 people watching him. So
yeah,
we're really thrilled to have him on board.
He gets a huge audience, that's for sure. Now we are going to jump straight into our next guest, Rocco. You can come on to the screen now, and I'm not even going to butcher your surname. I'm so sorry. Is it Loiacono?
Yeah, that's a good effort. That's pretty good.
Sorry, I'm a bogan from Queensland. I don't know what I'm talking about. Now, I will introduce you with a bit of a bio. So Rocco is a senior lecturer at Curtin University Law School, where he teaches in the areas of property law and legal research and writing. After graduating with a combined law and languages degree, he practiced as a lawyer for 10 years, most of that time at Clayton, one of Australia's largest law firms. And Rocco received the award of his PhD from the University of Western Australia in 2014, which focused on the translation difficulties arising from the differences that exist between continental legal systems and the English common law. Rocco has always had an interest in politics, fundamental freedoms, and the rule of law, and contributes regularly on these matters on Sky News, in the Spectator Australia, Quadrant Online, the Epoch Times, and the Australian, as well as authoring a chapter in Fundamental Rights in the Age of COVID-19, a Connor Court book. And obviously we are big fans of Connor Court around here. But Rocco, you are here tonight to talk about your brand new book that you are co-authoring with Augusto Zimmerman, another fellow WA member that Kate, I know, is very familiar with as well.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Yes, I've just put out a book with Augusto called Deconstructing ScoMo, Critical Reflections, there it is, yes, on Australia's 30th Prime Minister. And why, just see love the cover, yes.
And as Selby said, it's nice to put a face to the name, because I think we've all read a lot of your articles in the Specky, that's for sure. So it is great. Thanks.
Look, why do we write this book? Well, for several reasons. One, John Ruddick, I know when we spoke previously, one of the things you wanted was someone to put out a book on Scott Morrison, and you were hoping a really good book on Scott Morrison would come out. Well, hopefully this foots the bill, because as we know, we have a Prime Minister who's a windsock, and it just depends what way the wind blows and what things he's saying. Doesn't matter what day it is. I mean, last year he was calling people in West Australia cavemen, and today he was here talking to a business event saying that WA was in a unique situation and he supports Mark McGowan. So there's just no consistency and no principle. So what we really wanted to do was actually nail him down on the things he has said in the past. And this book doesn't just cover COVID, it covers his prime ministership. So these are articles that Augusto and I have published in the Specky and Quadrant and a few other online publications on various issues that surround liberty and individual freedom and fundamental rights, and how he has just been so deficient in all those areas. I mean, let's not forget, this is the guy that said free speech doesn't create a single job, which is the biggest load of idiocy I've ever heard a Prime Minister say. And James Allen from University of Queensland, who kindly wrote the foreword for us, said, look, I don't know how you're going to do it, because you're trying to deconstruct someone who's so hollow. But the whole point is that we just want to put on the record exactly how hollow, how bad he is. And it's also we're hoping to get people in reading this book to think. We want people to think about really where you're going to place your vote this time around. The major parties obviously you cannot be trusted any longer. And I say this as someone who had voted Liberal all his life up until 2014. And what I've seen since then has obviously disgusted me. People, there still seems to be this idea, and I was listening to Talkback Radio this morning, there still seems to be this idea around that people should stop complaining. Australia's a great country, and look, at the end of the day, what we have to do everything we possibly can at all costs to keep Albanese out. So you have to vote Liberal anyway. Well, I just don't think that view is any longer tenable. Augusta certainly doesn't think this view is any longer tenable. And when you hopefully read this book, you'll see why the Liberals are just as bad, if not worse, than the Labor Party. And you should not direct your vote to either of them.
Well, I know that Augusto has been very pointed at his criticisms of Scott Morrison, which has been fabulous to watch, I must say. Now, Rocco, there is a question here from Anthony saying, can you outline what Australians' implied right of free speech is?
Okay. The implied right to free speech is actually still up for debate, pretty much in the High Court at the moment. Obviously, considering the recent decision that came down concerning Liberal Democrats last week, people are seriously questioning whether there is an implied right to free speech in the Constitution. It derives from the wording in the section of the Constitution which talks about the House of Representatives and members of the House of Representatives and senators being directly chosen by the people. And therefore, if they're directly chosen by the people have a right to discuss political opinions and views freely. I mean, at the end of the day, I think what there needs to be, and I think Augusta would agree, is there needs to be a restoration of fundamental freedom. That there is a statement or a bill that restores fundamental freedoms, such as freedom of speech and the like. Finding these implied rights here and there just doesn't cut it. And I'll give you a practical example why. Bob Brown in 2015, I think it was, had a case in the High Court where the implied right to political communication, freedom of political communication, was upheld in relation to protests. But 3 years later, it was struck down in relation to people praying outside abortion clinics. So irrespective of what your views are on abortion, it has to be a political matter because it's legislated.
Yes.
So that's why I think this notion of implied freedom of political communication, James Allen thinks it was made up. And I think as Australians and as a party, I think what we need to call for is the restoration of fundamental freedoms and our common law right to free speech. I mean, the constitutional commentators back in Sullivan, I think one of them, his name was, actually said in the 1960s, it's the freedom par excellence. Without it, you don't have any other freedoms. And even Margaret Thatcher said, free speech and freedom from interference from government is what helps along and creates a free society, and all other freedoms depend on that. I hope I've answered the question.
Well, there's another one here from David, and this is something that comes up quite a lot. And he asked, Rocco, do you support a Bill of Rights?
Look, I don't think you have a Bill of Rights, because look how far it's got them down there in Victoria. I mean, the thing about a Bill of Rights is it has to be drafted in such a way that it's very broad brush. And the problem with that is that then, because it's written down, it becomes justiciable. That means the courts then get to look at it, and then the courts either restrict it or allow it for things that you wouldn't have imagined it might be allowed. So I'm not necessarily a supporter of a Bill of Rights, but we need a change in the philosophy to have some kind of restoration of our common law freedoms. That was where I think the Religious Freedom Bill fell over, because they were looking at it from the point of view of discrimination. Who can we not offend? Yeah. Whereas it should be, well, we shouldn't be worrying about offending people. And I think a big solution, a really big way to resolve a lot of this would be to repeal Section 18C. I think you'd solve a lot of problems if you simply repealed Section 18C.
Yes. And there is a comment here from Benjamin saying, a Bill of Rights only works if the legal framework is stating that the bill is acknowledging natural rights and is not imparting rights and of itself. Would you agree with that, Rocco?
Yeah, well, that's why the American Bill of Rights seems to work, because it's based on that declaration in the based on that line in the Declaration of Independence, and that's what formed it, that we have inalienable rights such as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
There's a lot of love for the idea of death to 18C. And Rob asked a question, Rocco, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but what do you think of our free speech policy? And we will be playing a video on that tonight. So he says, what does Rocco think of part of our free speech policy, which we are releasing tonight, to have a referendum on adding basically a copy and paste of the US First Amendment?
As I said, that would be a restoration. That would be in line with what I was talking about, a restoration of freedoms bill. And I think that's probably definitely the way to go. Yeah.
Well, now you've got to go and do your homework. You'll have to go do your homework and read our free speech policy now.
Yeah. but that, I think that would be a really, really good start.
Hopefully you'll stay on board tonight, because as I said, the video we'll be playing the video during the show, and then it will be live to share from 8:30 onwards. So hopefully we get the tick of approval from you after that, Rocco.
Okay.
Actually, John says that Craig Kelly has stated that your book is a must read for all UAP members. And so John Ruddick,
wow.
Do you say that it's a must read for all Lib Dem members as well?
Yes, I bought the book a week ago. I've read about the first third of it, and it's. I'm really glad you wrote it, Rocco, because for decades to come, it's going to be like the textbook on why right of centre Australians were unhappy with ScoMo. It really lays out the full case, and I think he's found guilty. I think of being a completely fake person. Politically.
Yes. Well, that's the only thing he's authentic on is being fake. Yes. I also want to say, look, based on something I was saying earlier, if I'm glad that all members want to buy the book, but maybe you might want to recommend it to your friends for that very reason, who are wavering, who are thinking, oh, look, we just need to keep Labor out. This is the reason why we need to, I mean, Paul Keating once said, if you change the government, you change the country. Well, we need to change the parties to change the country. And this book hopefully will provide you the reasoning why. And this is, I mean, it's funny how history repeats itself. I mean, in 1972, Sir Robert Menzies was so disgusted with the party he founded and led for 22 years that he voted DLP in the 1972. And in 1974, he wrote that letter to his daughter, Heather, lamenting the state of the Victorian branch of the Liberals, because they were all these small L Liberals who were just out to get quick votes. And he said the whole thing was tragic. And look where we are 50 years later.
Exactly.
It's amazing how it's turned full circle.
Exactly right. Now, just to finish up, Rocco, where can we buy the book? How can people buy the book?
Okay, what I'll do is on the chat, I'll put up the links to the book on Lock Press, and I want to shout out to Lock Press, who've really helped us turn this book around quickly. And there's also a Kindle version that just came out today, so if people don't want to wait for the hard copy, you can get an ebook version. And a shout out to John Larter as well, who's inspired a lot of people and inspired us, I think, to help to put this book together. And John, hopefully, I mean, we can get Ben Falconer over the line over here, the cop who's challenging the vaccine mandates, because I know you were an inspiration to him as well.
And Rocco as well, just for those that are listening and not watching live, can you say the name of the website where we can buy the book? Yeah,
it's called Deconstructing ScoMo altogether. So deconstructing, then ScoMo altogether.com.au.
Beautiful. And David says, will you be the AG in the first Lib Dems government?
Watch this space.
Beautiful. Now, for those that are here live in the chat box, the links are all up there for the website and for the Kindle version, but certainly get to the Deconstructing ScoMo website to buy it yourself. Thank you very, very much, Rocco, for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much for having us.
Beautiful. And I hope you do get to stay in the chat box, because a lot of people commenting about that in there as well. So
I'll stay until the kids get home and make it.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Rocco.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night, Rocco. Thanks. Good to see you, mate.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Kirsty.
Thanks, Rocco. It's fantastic to have someone from Western Australia come on your show, Kirsty. And he's been fantastic behind the scenes, and I'm going to give him a call after this and ask him to run as a House of Representative candidate for us. So stay by the phone, Rocco. He'll be getting a call from me shortly.
Yay.
Bye.
A lot of love in the comments. A lot of love in the comments, that is for sure. I'm just looking at some more of these things in here now. Actually, I guess while we're talking about some of the legal work, we don't have, this is a Victorian question, but we don't actually have David Limbrick on board tonight. But Alana says, as the AG, the first thing he could do is repeal the Victorian pandemic bill. So yes, as people can see, Rocco is in the chat. Rocco, make sure you change it so that you're commenting to everyone and not just hosts and panelists. Now we are going to bring in those wild bearded men from South Australia. They've got a very big weekend coming up. James, can you get a little bit closer? Can you get a little bit closer?
Yeah, we can get closer. We've known each other for years.
And a white background.
Adorable. Absolutely adorable, you two.
It's kind of like floating heads. You've got white shirts and a white background.
Well, I just got these new shirts printed, actually. The new Liberal Democrats shirts.
Less government, more freedom. Beautiful.
Just as will appear on the ballot.
One of you should have worn the orange shirt, the old school orange Lib Dem shirts. Wow.
Yeah, I got a few of them still lying around. A few of those rare classic treats lying around.
A lot of well, Simon's going beards for the win. David says it's the wild colonial core flute gang. Yes, you are getting in trouble over core flutes. Liam says, I want one of those shirts. So, you know.
Well, I only just got one, so good luck.
Yeah, that's the first one. That's the second one.
All right, so we need to get some of those spread around the country. Now you've got kind of a big weekend coming up.
Oh yeah, I suppose just a bit.
Something going
on. It's going to be big. We've got a big day planned on Saturday. Mm-hmm. We've got a few of you guys from Victoria coming over. Thank you.
We've got the Freedom Bus.
Rumours that maybe you are, Kirsty.
Well, yes.
In a Freedom Bus. Of course, Kate is already over here, and she's going to be helping us out on Saturday as well. And a few big people from around the country as well. So it should be good. Should be exciting. It's already exciting. It's a big week.
Yeah. Well, and so James, Peter, Josh, what's been the kind of vibe over the last few days? How are you in the lead up to it? How are the nerves? What's kind of happening? Are you just running around crazy? Well, actually, Josh, you're in isolation still, so you're not doing very much at all, are you?
Well, actually, that's not true. I've leading up to the election, I've actually had a lot of people reach out to me in regards to policies and things like that. So while I've been an ISO, not being able to run around and illegally put up call flutes a meter too high.
So we can blame the other guys for that.
Yes, exactly. Yes. I have been able to still sort of work with the party, which has been nice.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I think we're sending a lot of the Victorian team to your district in Elder, so we're going to be spread around. And as Chris says, illegally, it's such a grey area, yes, but it's a $16,000 fine. So we do want to make sure those call flutes are in the right place. No one wants to be paying that. Now, obviously, after you've obviously, James, talking to you, you had a great appearance the other day on Bernardi, and you've had quite a bit of media lately, which has been fantastic.
Yeah, so I was on Corey's show on Friday. Kate accompanied me to the studio, actually. We met for the first time in real life, which was great. Great to meet you, Kate.
You too.
And then we went out afterwards and celebrated the end of the dancing ban in South Australia.
Woo!
Fantastic.
That's true. We were on the dance floor at 12:01 a.m.
Nice.
And it was just such a fantastic atmosphere. And coming from Western Australia, where it's banned at the moment, it's just such a contrast. And I wouldn't want to be anywhere else except South Australia at the moment.
Were you doing some of these ones, like cutting shapes?
I think I was doing the nut bush at some stage, but I only remembered that when I was in the shower 3 days later. So
yes, shapes were cut, the nut bush was done, everything, it all happened.
Wow. Well, Freedom Vivian says, don't let them stop you from dancing ever.
That's it. It's not Footloose here anymore. But back to the question. Yeah, so I was on Sky. And I'll also be on Tofa tomorrow, which I'm actually really looking forward to.
Beautiful. Excellent.
I've been a big fan of Tofa's for about 5 years, so it'd be great.
Will you be smoking a cigar?
I can't smoke in here, unfortunately. Otherwise I would be. and I don't have a space outside, but I will be drinking a whiskey.
Oh, I was going to say, well, the next best thing is to have a good whiskey in front of you, because we know that Topher is a big fan of the cigars and whiskey. David's now in the comments going, I want a cigar.
The only way to do politics.
I guess so. I guess so. Now, of course, and then after, like, you've got a big long day, obviously, on Saturday for the election, and odds are looking pretty good. Sports bet odds are looking pretty nice for you, James.
Yeah, I actually think that's a pretty good bet.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it. It's probably not quite right, but I'm just putting the idea out there. No fate.
The free market, James. You can bet on yourself.
I actually wouldn't even know how to do a sports bet. I'm pretty lame that way. But and then after the election, you've got an after party.
Yes.
Whereabouts is that? Tell us.
So that's the Duke of Brunswick, which has been a good friend to the Liberal Democrats here in South Australia. We do regular events there. So they're going to have us there, and everyone who's helped out is welcome. Bring friends. We've got a few good people to meet. So it'll be great, I reckon. It'll be good fun. Win, lose or draw, even though we're going to win. It'll be good fun.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys for joining us tonight. Keep out of too much trouble between now and Saturday.
No promises, guys.
We'll watch the height of the corflutes from here on out.
Yes, please get your measuring sticks out there. We don't want any big fines, but I'm looking forward to heading down the Freedom Bus, and we'll see you Friday night.
Can't wait to have you here, Kirsty.
Thanks so much for joining us, James, Peter, and Joshua.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Have a good one.
I'll see you Saturday.
And obviously the guys are staying in the chat as well. A lot of comments in there for the team South Australia. John Ruddick, you've been following. Obviously, you're a big elections nerd. What have you been following in terms of our chances in South Australia?
Well, look, it is unusual for a government to lose after one term. It barely ever happens federally. It does happen occasionally at the state level. So it's going to be, the polls are saying that the Liberal Party is going to, the incumbent Premier is likely to lose. Look, there's no UAP candidate. There is a Pauline Hanson candidate. I think there's one or two other sort of freedom parties, but it's very good. We just got the luck of the draw. We're number one on the ballot paper. So look, it's I know what I'll be doing Sunday night. I'll be very much following the South Australian Electoral Commission website.
Well, we will probably have it on our phones because we'll be at the pub, obviously.
Right. Okay. Very good.
We'll send you photos, John.
We'll send you photos because we'll, obviously we'll be standing around all day, battling the major parties, throwing our how to votes in their faces. So it's going to be a lot of fun. John also says you all should be scrutineering, and yes, we will be definitely having some scrutineers throughout South Australia as well. I think Canelm said earlier there was 771 booths in South Australia, so we are really just going to, squish around as far as we can, spread around. Obviously, anyone in South Australia, or if you can get to South Australia, if you're in Melbourne, come on the Freedom Bus. It's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. We've got Paul Barker, our candidate for Corangamite, driving the bus. Yes, don't worry, he is very capable and registered to drive a bus. Obviously, they need volunteers out and around the place. So please get in touch either via the website or contact@ldp.org.au. Let's get some things happening. John asked you need to be double vaxxed to be a scrutineer. I'm not entirely sure, John, but probably very likely. So we are now going to go into our blistery history. John Ruddick, what have you got for us this week?
You tell me, how much time have I got tonight, Kirsty?
I'm going to say 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay, well, let's get into it. I would like to talk about a person that I revere. In fact, if I had had a son, I would have called him Ronald. And that person is Ronald Reagan. Now, I think we've got a picture there of Ronnie when he was a young kid. Now, look, he was born to a poor family in the Midwest. And look, I'm sorry, this is going to have to be like done over 2 episodes. 3 minutes this week, 3 minutes next week. His father was a bad alcoholic. His mother was quite a devout Christian. And he went to a local university or little college. He was sort of active in politics on campus. But look, he was just born with amazingly Hollywood good looks and charm. And ambition, and he went down to Hollywood, became a pretty big movie star in the 1950s. Now, it did for a while there, he was one of the A-listers. He used to get derided as a B-lister movie. And he married Jane Wyman, whose star kept rising. Ronald's star did not rise as much because in the 1950s, Reagan, who had been a Democrat and a believer in the New Deal, which was basically democratic socialism, he became super alarmed about communists, real communists, Soviet agents in Hollywood. And he became sort of the leader of the trade union movement in Hollywood to stop communist takeover. And that's what didn't help his movie career. Now, he did meet his wife, Nancy, his second wife, Nancy, because Jane Wyman left him, which broke his heart. And I think we've got a photo there of him and Nancy. Now, they met because the Red Scare had sort of got a little bit out of control. They said that Nancy was a communist. She rang up Ronald Reagan. She said, look, I'm not a communist. You've got to help me. And anyway, now they ended up loving each other intensely. They ended up having 2 children and they adopted another child. Now, Ronald used to say that he felt lonely when Nancy left the room. Okay. And they had this really close, loving bond until the day they died. So much so that to a small extent, their children were a little bit sort of sidelined. Now, what happened was in 1964, well, 1963, John F. Kennedy is shot dead. Obviously very dramatic, obviously terrible. And then, so a year later, there was an election and his vice president was always going to win because the country was still in shock over JFK being shot. So Barry Goldwater was the Republican candidate in 1964, who's probably the most libertarian candidate for president ever, except for the Libertarian Party. And Barry Goldwater got smashed. And it was clear he was going to lose by a mile. But Ronald Reagan stepped up and gave this magnificent speech called A Time for Choosing. It's probably his finest speech. I would recommend it on YouTube. Just type in Reagan 1964 speech. And this is where Reagan came out 2 weeks before Goldwater was about to lose badly. And he really stood by Goldwater 100% and basically nailed his colors to the mast and said, look, I am a hardcore political person. And that was the beginning of Ronald Reagan's rise to the presidency, which we'll finish off next week, Kirsty.
Wonderful. Now, there's a lot of comments about it. Nadia is saying she went to the Reagan Museum in LA at Christmas time and it was fascinating. Yes. And there's a comment from Vivian, and I would definitely agree in terms of we're not big fans of Nancy Reagan's stance on drugs. Did actually cause a lot of issue, the war on drugs. But, there's a lot of other good things as well. Rosemary says everyone laughed when he was elected and now people praise him. Alice and Katie say that it's lucky that you've had daughters, John.
Well, I liked the ring of Ronald Ruddick. I thought
Ruddick.
Yes.
Rodney Ruddick.
Yes.
Yes. So that's what we've got in there. I will also say that at CPAC a couple of years ago in Sydney, they brought out Peggy Grande, who was one of the wonderful staffers to Ronald Reagan, and gosh, like she was an amazing woman in herself, very beautiful inside and out, and the love that she still has for her former boss is really quite amazing. Like he really played such a monumental role in her life, and she is a fabulous speaker and just a really beautiful lady, as I said before. So there's some more comments here about the state election. People saying they're going to be helping out for the very first time. Peggy Noonan, that's a different one, sorry, she was a speechwriter, yes. She's written some fantastic speeches, and there's a couple also shared in the chat as well. But as I was saying, there's some people that are going to be helping out in Adelaide or over South Australia over the weekend, their very first time helping a political party. So it just shows how important that is. Over the last couple of years, people are really getting involved in politics now, which is excellent. Now, very exciting. We are going to go into our 9th Freedom Manifesto policy. And something that we were talking about a bit earlier, of course, is free speech. This video that is coming out stars the amazing and wonderful David Limbrick MP.
Freedom of speech is fundamental to a civil and democratic society. Open and honest dialogue allows people to share their ideas and opinions without the threat of force and government oppression. Freedom of speech also means hearing opinions that we may not like, Hi, I'm David Limbrick, and I'm your Victorian Senate candidate for the Liberal Democrats. In this video, I want to talk to you about the 9th policy in the Liberal Democrats' Freedom Manifesto: free speech. The free exchange of ideas and opinions allows these ideas and opinions to be tested, with the more robust being accepted. The Liberal Democrats will do 3 things. Firstly, abolish Section 18C of the Discrimination Act. This piece of legislation makes it unlawful to offend, insult, or humiliate, and hauls those who fall foul of it up before tribunals headed by bureaucrats at the Australian Human Rights Commission. It's an affront to free speech and the idea of a fair trial. Secondly, we'll stop media censorship. A decade and a half ago, the consensus in the West was that it was necessary to censor what was thought to be radical propaganda, but this has led to an internet filter consisting of thousands of blocked websites for a wide range of reasons. Some of these may be well-intentioned, but putting this power in the hands of the government can rapidly turn into the banning of anything that does not suit their political agenda. It's too much power for any government to have. And finally, we encourage a free and open internet. Much of the increasingly political censorship imposed by tech companies is done in fear of further regulation being targeted at them to tackle what they think to be misinformation or fake news. This is particularly true in Australia, where platforms and page owners can be held liable for what is posted by other people. A clear framework of less internet censorship by the government would take away much of the incentive for tech companies to censor their own content. If this policy is implemented, Australia will become a place where ideas are discussed freely and information is shared without the threat of political censorship. To learn more, head to www.ldp.org.au.
Authorised by John Humphries for the Liberal Democratic Party, Mount Waverley, Victoria.
Well, what do we think, guys? Another great video from David. Gerard also saying that was love this one. Liam saying that was great. A lot of smiles and love and fantastic, and a lot of love for this.
One of my favourite things that former Senator David Leyonhjelm said about free speech when I worked for him was, free speech is you can say what you like, it doesn't mean that I have to listen. So that was one of his favourite lines. And honestly, it's gotten too far. There's so much cancel culture going on at the moment, and people just need to, like David said in the video, why do we still have the 18C of the Racial Discrimination Act? This thing about offend or assault or humiliate, you choose to take offence. It's something Leyonhjelm said as well. So I love the free speech policy. It's one of my favourites.
And John, what do you think of the video made out of your policy?
Well, look, the thing about free speech is that it is obviously civil to let people say what they want to say, and it's polite. But there is another really, really important reason why it's so important. And that is that occasionally a fringe idea will, with the passage of time, be proven to be an important truth. Okay, so I mean, so this is why we need to let all ideas flourish, because occasionally the wacko, okay, like the people that used to say the world is round, occasionally the wacko will be right. Okay, and so this is why we just say, well, look, let's just have a laissez-faire approach to ideas. Let's put everything out there. Now, you know, in Germany after World War II, they, liberal democracy, they said, we're just going to carve out one little exception to our free speech. We're not going to allow the publication of Mein Kampf. Now, nobody really protested against that. Okay, but my personal view would have been, firstly, if people want to get Mein Kampf, they can get it. Okay, so it wasn't going to stop the ideas being disseminated. But I mean, the Western world never banned that book. Okay, and I don't think it should. And I think it just, once you make an exception for, say, well, look, it's okay to get rid of this. We can have free speech, yeah, but just not this little bit. It then grows and grows and grows. This is why the US First Amendment in the Bill of Rights is just so important. It absolutely point blank guarantees free speech. And, and look what that's done. Look what America has created in the last 250 years.
Yeah, exactly right. And a lot of comments and going here about suppressing ideas only makes them more attractive. Rick says, allowing free speech, you know what your enemies are thinking. Liam says, this is why the Russian news should not have been removed.
Yes.
And Lance says, like the conspiracy theories during COVID, which many of them have now been turned out to be true. Katie says, if you don't want to watch, read, or listen to something, then don't. Book burning is never okay. And obviously with the cancelling, I even saw a very funny photo today of the National Mustard Museum in America, which has also taken the Russian mustard off the shelf in the Mustard Museum. I'm really quite amazed that there is a National Mustard Museum.
Now they've just created a black market for Russian mustard.
Russian mustard from the museum. Everything Russian is now bad. RT banned, things go banned. Michael says things banned go underground and create monsters that aren't seen until much later. Now, that Freedom Manifesto video will be available on YouTube and Facebook after the show, so after 8:30. And as David points out here, watching the Freedom Manifesto videos until the end on YouTube really helps the algorithm recommended to fresh eyes. So make sure you do watch it to the end. Like it, share it, comment on it, spread it around all over the place. Helen also says free speech education in all of our primary and secondary schools and back into the universities too. Well, that'd be amazing. And as Freedom Vivian says, Russian cats are also banned. I did see that as well from one of the cat shows. They're banning the Russian cat breed. It's really quite insane. There's a very good dad joke from David saying the Mustard Museum is in the seedy part of town. Oh, come on. I expected a little bit more than that.
Proud.
Bloody hell. I will say, obviously, we don't have David Limbrick here tonight because he's a very busy man. But I just wanted to, he does actually have an article that came out in the Herald Sun about the 2-year anniversary of the state of emergency in Victoria. So we've been in a state of emergency for 2 years. And I'm just going to read out a little bit that was from that and also that he put on his Facebook today. So as David says, today is the 2-year anniversary of the state of emergency in Victoria. The state of emergency powers were meant to be used proportionately. Instead, Victoria has lived under a state of excess, with excessive rules carried out with excessive force, still with no end date in sight. Under the hashtag state of excess, 2 things I will never forget are: 1, being arrested for exercising my democratic right to protest. Number 2, sitting on the steps of Parliament with my colleague Tim Quilty to speak out against playground closures. And he also asked, post in the comments and obviously message here online what you remember as being some of the most cruel and ridiculous rules so far, because of course these ridiculous rules seem to never end. Do you have any memories of, obviously, Kate, it's being in WA, it's been quite interesting for you, and even just for you now finally being able to go out and then going back in, it's going to be quite interesting. It's not just like flying like we used to do all the time.
No, and in Western Australia, you have to be boosted to get back in. So as soon as you're eligible to be boosted, you have to be. So I chose to get the vaccination to come and see my family. It's the choice that I have to live with. It's not what I would have preferred, but nothing could keep me apart from my family. But when it comes to the booster, I don't think I'll be going anywhere because I don't want to be forced into having it. But that's the state of Western Australia, and we're still living under a state of emergency like Victoria, and the restrictions are getting worse and worse and worse because we're so far behind the rest of the country because we haven't let COVID in until now. And now they're all panicking and wetting the bed and don't know what to do. So freedoms are gradually being squashed every day in Western Australia, and it's really devastating to see.
Yeah, and Benjamin says on here, the most cruel was being prevented from crossing state borders to support my mum while she sat in a hospital ward watching my dad pass away. There's so many horrendous stories like that.
That's something that John Larter was talking about for the domino effect of these restrictions that will have on people. The suicide rate, it's just, people haven't thought that the impact it has on people's mental health, and that's something that I'm really concerned about as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the stories that we've heard over the last couple of years have just, I don't know, I think they're all just kind of burned in our brain, the amount of emails and phone calls that we've had. And as David says here, our children have suffered so much as well. Now, I am just going to quickly run through some of the events. Kate, you've got something happening for the WA team on the weekend as well. Do you want to mention that first?
Yes, we've got our meet and greet with our 10 House of Representative candidates this Saturday at Piney Lakes Reserve in Western Australia. I'll be an apology, but I'll be back next week and we'll have another event then to be confirmed. So get along to Piney Lakes Reserve at 12:30 this Saturday if you're in the West.
Well, you do have a good reason to be an apology for this weekend, being in Adelaide for the state election there. John, do you know, obviously we mentioned earlier before, you've got the Flat Taxes and Free Markets Lunch Symposium for Nick Samios in Brower. So make sure.
2 weeks tomorrow.
Yep.
It's going to be a good event. And we've just endorsed a very good candidate for the federal seat of Parramatta, which is actually where this location is going to be. So come along and meet Lisa Tay as well.
Yeah, and she is great. I love Lisa so much. So she's going to be an awesome candidate in Parramatta. Yeah. Nick Samios also has this weekend Pizza in the Pub this Saturday in Hotel Pennant Hills. You can get to the website for that information or get to Nick's website as well. If you're in Queensland, obviously, as we saw earlier, Cam is on a regional tour. So he's Goondiwindi, St George, Charleville, Roma and Dalby, and he's out there with his number 2 Senate candidate, Tegan Granger. They're also doing the Toowoomba Ag Show 25th and 27th of March. All candidates are doing a whole bunch of different things around the state as well. A lot of them are doing local markets. So there's Caboolture, Nunda, Toowong, Nerang, Emerald Lakes markets, where you'll see some of our Liberal Democrats candidates there with a stand. Jens Lippener in Longman has a fundraising brunch April 2nd on the website. You'll see that. Michelle Jarks in Blair on the 20th of March. She's got a barbecue in Queen's Park. In Victoria, Amanda Mead in Wannon, who's been on the show before. She's got a big event, her launch called Rise of Regional, and that's out in Mortlake, and that's the 26th of March, and I'm really looking forward to heading out there for that one. It's going to be a lot of fun. Paul Barker in Corangamite, he's got a few other barbecues going around in Port Lonsdale and Torquay, and Paul is a very busy man all over the place. And as I said, the WA event, but please get to the website. You'll see all the events on there. If you want to find out more, you can email me, you can see on the events page, you can see on the state page, all the different events on there as well. Simon has also mentioned get to Westerfolds Park. So that's another one for the Northeast branch. All the branch meetings are definitely all on the website. So please get to some events, meet some other Lib Dems, meet some candidates, meet some other members and volunteers, join, donate, volunteer, get to our website. John, Kate, anything else to say before we finish up tonight?
Just make sure you like and share that Freedom Manifesto video, please.
Absolutely. Every day I have people out of the blue contact me, say how much they love the Freedom Manifesto.
Yes.
So let's pump that one, everybody. Good point, Kate, on the social media.
The Freedom Manifesto, when people see it, they love it. It's just a matter of getting it all out there. So that's why we do rely on all of you to share the love all around the place. Alfred says we need to end it with a 4X.
I'm in South Australia, so I'll have to have a Cooper's or a Pirate Life. Sorry.
And John's always got Dasahi or something. What are the ones you drink?
Yes, we've got the manufacturers in Queensland, however.
Oh, support. Wonderful. Well, thanks very much for joining us tonight. Thanks to all of our wonderful guests, Rocco, James, Peter, Josh, and obviously John Larter. Thank you all, everyone, for joining us, and we will see you all next week.
Fingers crossed, South Australia.
It's going to be fun.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for joining us for Liberty Chat, brought to you by the Liberal Democrats. Visit ldp.org.au for more info.